And we begin tonight with the parable of the Good Samaritan. Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37 reads as follows. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? Jesus replied, how do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, which by the way is an area in western Palestine, as he traveled, came where the man was, and he saw him. He took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, a small sum of money, and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Many of us who were raised in the church learned that Bible verse in Sunday school. But apparently for Republicans, the parable actually ends with the Samaritan choking the stripped and beaten man until he lost consciousness and died. At least if you go by the overwhelming reaction of conservative Republicans over the weekend to the arrest of the man who killed Jordan Neely on a New York subway train, Daniel Penny. Congressman Matt Gaetz gave Penny the nickname the Subway Superman, while Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene hailed Penny as a hero, writing Jordan Neely was a violent criminal who should have been behind bars. The Wall Street Journal's conservative editorial board described Penny in a friendly Friday headline as the Subway Samaritan. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's expected to announce for president any day now, tweeted this. We must defeat the Soros-funded DAs, stop the left's pro-criminal agenda, and take back the streets for law-abiding citizens. We stand with good Samaritans like Daniel Penny. Let's show this Marine America's got his back. Never mind that Daniel Penny has not, at least as of now, volunteered to be the right's next George Zimmerman or Kyle Rittenhouse, two vigilante heroes of the right who are beloved and famous among Republicans solely for killing people who they believe need killing and getting acquitted for it at trial. Penny is likely very busy working with his lawyer on his defense against a second-degree manslaughter charge in New York. Though the Christian crowdfunding site DeSantis promoted on Mother's Day weekend has already raked in more than $2 million. And here's the funny thing that's actually not so funny. Republicans, who every election cycle clearly believe they need a new and more frightening boogeyman to dangle in front of white working-class voters to terrify them into voting for the party of tax cuts for billionaires, have moved on from critical race theory and inflation to a toxic combination of drag shows, Black history, brown immigrants, secret Jewish overlords, George Soros, drink, and the always classic blue cities like Chicago and New York are Gotham, and you, white citizen, can be the Batman or Superman. Only Republican Batman and Superman, unlike the ones in the comics, actually kill people. And you, conservative, armed conservative, must be heavily armed and empowered to kill at will with your handgun, your AR-15, or even with your bare hands anyone who makes you feel threatened or uncomfortable anywhere, anytime, at your front door, in your driveway, driving by a Black Lives Matter rally, on the terrifying, scary, black man-filled New York subway. And the people who tend to need killing just happen to be Black or brown or suffering from mental health crises or white, but just a little too cozy with BLM. And killing them is not just your right, Republican citizen. Doing it makes you a hero. Joining me now is Thomas Zimmer, visiting professor of history at Georgetown University and writer of the Democracy Americana newsletter, and Charles Blow, New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst. Thank you both for being here. I did ask my lovely producers to track you down, Mr. Zimmer, because you wrote a thread that I think everyone should read on Twitter, if those people who are still reading Twitter. And you wrote, and part of it said this. You said this promoting vigilantism sends a clear message. It encourages white militants to use whatever force they please to, quote, fight back against anyone or anything associated with the left by protecting and glorifying those who have engaged in vigilante violence. Call it the Kyle Rittenhouse dogma. The right is defined by a political and social culture of white grievance, ethno-religious nationalism, gun fundamentalism, toxic masculinity, and glorified militancy. It is bound to produce many more Kyle Rittenhouses. Very hard to sustain democracy under such circumstances. Please say more.
Well, look, I have to admit, I'm actually really disturbed by the reactions on the right. I can't say I'm surprised, but I am disturbed because what this tells us is that all strands of the right, Republican elected officials, the media machine, the reactionary intellectual sphere, the conservative base, they're all openly and aggressively embracing right-wing vigilante violence. That is not in and of itself a new phenomenon in American history. It has been for large parts of U.S. history the norm, but it has really radicalized since the summer of 2020. That's why I think it is important to think back to Kyle Rittenhouse and sort of what happened in the aftermath of the protests after the murder of George Floyd. And on the right, what we're seeing now, I think it's really important to think about this embrace of vigilante violence as a tool in their fight against democracy. It is a tool to suppress the majority because they know they don't have majority support. And it is a tool to enforce their vision of society on the majority. And it's just very hard to, imagine a sort of stable multiracial democracy under such circumstances. And that is the point. That is exactly the point. That is why they are embracing this kind of white vigilante violence.
Right, and I think to just be clear, Charles Blow, we don't even know if Daniel Penny is a right winger, if he wants to be the new Kyle Rittenhouse. It's not. Unlike George Zimmerman, who leaned into becoming the right's new hero and auctioned the gun and made a big show of himself, right? Or Kyle Rittenhouse, who posed with members of the Proud Boys and has really leaned into becoming a mini celebrity for killing those two men at the Black Lives Matter march. We don't know this guy's ideology. All we know is that he fits the bill of what they want, right? Similarly, you had the now fired former Fox News star, or Fox star, I don't call it news anymore, Tucker Carlson, order the governor of Texas to pardon a man who's now gotten 25 years in prison because he shot a man who was white, but who was at a Black Lives Matter rally. So therefore, he's an enemy, and who declared that he was going to go shoot some people. And then he did it. And then they didn't even look into who he was. Now it turns out he was also propositioning underage girls. So it's like they don't even care who you are. Their thing is, if you're a white man, you just get to kill whoever you want, and we're going to justify it. Your thoughts?
Right. And I think it's smart to think about it in the bigger, kind of more global sense of what we're viewing here. It is not necessarily about these people as individuals. It is about these people as symbols. What the right is saying to America, and has been saying for quite some time, is that they look at America in an apocalyptic view. They see a time coming when they feel like they may need to defend themselves from America itself, a more multiracial America, a browner America where they do not have the numerical advantage. And so what we have seen is a whole slate of legislation, not just, kind of gather around cultural figures, but legislation that expanded gun rights, expanded your ability to carry in public, expanded your ability to do things, to kill people and not be criminally liable for doing that, whether that be, using the Castle Doctrine, or whether it be saying that you decriminalizing killing protesters in the street. They are glomming onto vigilantes because they believe that there's a future in which they may have to be vigilantes, right? And so we see that even right now, as we see vigilantes showing up at polling sites to kind of monitor polling sites, and the judiciary having to step in and say, you can't do this. But they're trying to pass laws to protect people's ability to use weapons, to kill, to enforce their vision of America by force. That is a big issue, and that this latest case just kind of fits neatly into it. But we have to, as a society, pull back and say, there's something much bigger happening here. They see a future where they feel like they need to have the legal right to have a kind of vigilante civilian war against the country itself.